Hello, Man in Gray here with another Man in Gray book review. Today's book is, wait for it, Important Artifacts and Personal Property from the collection of Leonore Dolan and Harold Morris, including books, street fashion, and jewelry, Saturday, 14th February 2009, New York. I'm just going to call it Important Artifacts from here out. This is a book by Leanne Shapton. It was published by Farr, Straus and Giroux in 2009. It's 134 pages. Leanne Shapton is a Canadian-born writer and artist. She was also, as a teenager, one of the top swimmers in Canada, and her book "Swimming Lessons" is about her experiences as a competitive swimmer. She almost qualified for the Canadian Olympic team twice. So that's an interesting sidelight to her career. This is a graphic novel, but it's a graphic novel that's unusual because there's no drawings in it. It's made up entirely of photographs, as you can see here, different photographs. The conceit here is there's a couple from New York City. They meet, they fall in love, they move in together, then they have a falling out and split up. And then after a 4-year relationship, they go their separate ways, and then they decide to auction off all of their property that they have in common during this 4-year relationship. And so this novel is actually in the form of an auction catalog. So what we see here, the title is a title of a phony auction catalog. And to add to the irony, it's the auction is held on New Year's Day, 2009. And so the captions to the photographs are a description of the item, but there's also little tidbits that detail the plot of the story. So by reading, and they're all in chronological order. So by reading through the catalog, you can go through the whole history of this couple's relationship and how it fell apart. So to summarize real quickly, there's the couple who are shown on the back. And of course, these are actors. They're actually friends of the author, and so there's a whole bunch of photographs of these people through here that all staged. The guy's named Harold Morris. He's in his late 30s, and he's a professional photojournalist, and he travels all over the world taking photographs of different news events. And the female here is Leonore Dolan. She's 13 years younger than Harold, and she works for the New York Times newspaper. And during the course of this book, she gets a job at the Times as a columnist for the food section of the newspaper, writing a humorous column about cakes. And so she spends a lot of time baking cakes at home and then testing them out and then writing kind of humorous things about it. So these are the two couples. They meet at a Halloween party. Harold is dressed as Harry Houdini, the escape artist, right? That's foreshadowing there. And Leonore is dressed as Lizzie Borden, the woman who killed her parents, right? And wound up by herself. So that's kind of symbolizes what's happening here. They meet in the early stages of the book. They're kind of flirting with each other. They send each other little gifts. There's emails that are passed back and forth to each other, and eventually they fall in love. Every time Harold is off somewhere photographing things in Europe or Asia or whatever, he sends little presents to her, and she sends presents back, and they talk about how much they miss each other, and it's real gooey and everything. And when eventually they decide to move in together, Harold kind of pressures Leonore to move in together, and so they move in together. But pretty quickly, you start to see cracks in the relationship. Harold is in his late 30s and he's never been married. That should be a red flag, right? The guy has commitment issues, and he always seems to favor his job over his relationship. There's several times in here where Harold has to go off somewhere to film something for his job. And he leaves Leonore behind at some big event. It's her birthday. It's their anniversary. There's something going on, and he's not there. And he always tries to make up for it by sending her gifts. And that's the trend that you see at Harold. Every time they have a fight, every time something happens in the relationship, he tries to make it better by buying her some fancy something, some fancy doodad. And then the whole thing comes to a head when Leonore thinks she's pregnant. And she sends an email to Harold saying, I've got a pregnancy test, but I want to wait for you to get here so we can take it together and decide what to do. And Harold freaks out and sends an email back saying, I can't handle this right now. You go ahead and do it and tell me what happens. I've got to go off and clear my head. And after that, she realizes this relationship's not going to go anywhere. She asks advice from her mother. Her mother, who's gone through a divorce after a long, unhappy marriage, tells her, relationships are ups and downs. They have their positive and their negative sides. But if you spend more time being sad and unhappy than you do being happy, then there's something wrong with the relationship. You need to get out of it. And that's probably pretty good advice. So eventually they do split up. They decide to separate for a little bit, but then the separation becomes permanent. And then they finally decide to sell off their stuff. And so it sounds like it's a sad story, and in a way it is, but it's also, there's a lot of humor and satire in it, because after all, these are upper middle class New Yorkers, right? One of them has a job where he gets to fly all over the world, and the other one works for the biggest newspaper in America. And so it's hard to feel too sorry for them, right? They're both going to be fine. When you come from a privileged background like that, you don't really have a right to have personal problems, in my opinion. One of the things you're going to notice on this channel is I'm not going to do a lot of books about privileged people and their personal problems, because, as I say, I don't care about your personal problems if you've got enough money to fly all over the world at the drop of a hat. You don't have a right to be you don't have a right to be sad. You don't have a right to be miserable when you come from a privileged background. The average American, we have a study that came out just a few months ago. The average American today doesn't have $400 to spend in an emergency. In other words, most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. They're trying to scrape through day to day. And so if you're one of these people and you have problems, that's on you. I don't care. Plus, these characters are not real anyway, right? But there are some funny moments in here. For example, I can find it real quickly. The pictures on the cover are these tacky little poodles here, and they're given to Leonore by Harold, and then there's a little note that's sent with these ceramic poodles, and there's kind of a back and forth message they write on this piece of paper. And the origin of this is Leonore wants to get a dog. And Harold, who of course has a phobia about relationships, he doesn't want to have a dog, so he gives her these ceramic dogs instead. And they write to each other in this little thing. It says, I can tell you hate them. And then she says, no, but I love the dogs. The dogs love you. They're perfect pets, as they do not poo. That's Harold. And then she writes back, dearest Hal, they're not our pal. Their breed is a pain. A firm hand must train. Leonore, Leonore, fear not evermore. These unbroken pups you'll soon adore. You win, Dark Knight. At least they don't bite. So she's not happy with him because he's sending her these tacky little poodles instead of a real dog, but she gives in to him on that. And then there's a thing here. Here are, if you can see this, a couple of really tacky Dachshund salt and pepper shakers, and it says here that these were given to Leonore by Harold's mother. And it says here, after Morris mentioned to his mother that Dolan was fond of dogs, Eleanor Morris began bestowing gifts of dog paraphernalia for Dolan for holidays and birthdays. So, and it mentions in here they're unused. So here's a woman, the mother of the guy, who keeps sending her stuff that she doesn't want. She wants a real dog, not all this stuff. At the end of the book, the very last two photographs are kind of symbolic of what happened in their relationship. Harold Morris collects dried flowers, right? Because he's a romantic, but he can't commit. And Leonore Dolan has a collection of four-leaf clovers, dried four-leaf clovers, because she's hoping, to find Mr. Right, that she'll be lucky enough to find Mr. Right. So they're basically on two completely different pages, just like they are literally here. So this book is a fun read. It's a unique thing. Of course, the characters to me are not particularly interesting, and the story of the relationship is pretty cliched. It happens all the time. It's not anything unusual. But what makes this book fun is the format. You've got a novel in the form of a auction catalog, and it's kind of a parody of auction catalogs too, because everything in here is overpriced. There's a napkin that Harold writes a message to Leonora on, and it's valued at $10 to $12. And there's some used swimsuits that are valued at like $150. You know, if you've ever looked at auction catalogs, they tend to overvalue everything, because they know they're not going to get all that. So it's a humorous book. It's bittersweet, of course. And if you've gone through a relationship like this, maybe you're more sympathetic than I am. Anyway, it's a fun book to read. And if you're interested in kind of experimental graphic novels, this is a book you should read. The title, I'll just say, it's Important Artifacts, and the author is Leanne Shapton. This has been another Man in Gray book review. Thanks for watching.